corrupt. Much of the media in this country is not just fake, it's corrupt. And you have some very fine people, too. Great journalists, great reporters. But to a large extent, it's corrupt and it's fake. Ask the president of Finland a question, please.
Okay.
You're shaking your head, Tracy.
Well, speaking on behalf of the entire corrupt, fake media of America, I would have to say I did a happy dance in the shower today. There has been a spring in my step. This man is going down, at least in the House, and he is pushing himself with both feet into the loo. And, first we had Russia, and then we had the long Mueller report that took forever to be produced. And then we had Ukraine, and we got the transcript within days. A 30-minute phone call, by the way, and the transcript is only 10 minutes and 20 seconds long. That would have taken a lot of subpoenas and other things to get the full brief of what that was. And then today, my goodness, didn't Mr. Trump give us an incredible gift? He stood in front of a press pool and said exactly what he said he hadn't been accused of previously. He simply said, you know what? If it was me, China should investigate Biden too. He said it to an entire press pool of folks. All you have to do is ask CNN for the tape and put it in front of the House committee.
Chris, what's your thoughts? What's your take on what's the latest in the US, the impeachment process?
I can't believe that every country in the world actually thinks this guy's a joke, except for a large slice of voters in the USA. It's just astonishing. Everybody else seems to think, what a dickhead. And as I was saying to Tracy earlier, how come? It just doesn't work. I happened to listen to RNZ at lunchtime and heard some voice sound bites come, and I thought, man, this guy just doesn't get it.
The question is going to be, what are the Republicans are going to do to use as their talking points now? What can they possibly morally say when it's not literally right in front of them? This guy has had so much hubris. He has had so much utter, bald ignorance. It is his own undoing. No one had to push him. And
will Americans vote him back in?
Oh, now that's a totally different show, my friend.
Will they vote him back in? What do you think?
I'm afraid, honestly afraid of foreign interference. And I am afraid of the gerrymandering that has terminally broken our system. And I am afraid what comes forward, who we choose as well. If it's Biden, I have great fears. If it's Elizabeth Warren, well, then my tail starts to wag.
Is that who you would like to see? Is that who you'd like to see?
Yes.
Why her rather than Biden?
Biden is Obama 2.0 in the same way that Hillary Clinton was Obama 2.0, and nobody wants the same thing that they just had a few years ago. Nobody is excited about Joe Biden. No one. And Bernie got out the youth vote. There was excitement. Obama got out the youth vote. Nobody under 35 will be walking the streets for this man. They will, however, for Elizabeth Warren.
It's a real phenomenon, isn't there? There was an article on the New Zealand Herald today about this is actually the real show to watch. The real show to watch at the moment is simply called America.
Democracy. That's what's at stake here.
Very interesting. Hey, Chris or Tracy Barnett, you've been fantastic this afternoon on the panel. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having us, Warren.
And to Ada Ventura for putting the show together all week. I'm Wallace Chapman, back next Monday from 3:45. It is Checkpoint right now.
Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. E haere nei, the government ditches what's been described as a Trump-esque Muslim ban. A chunk of State Highway 4 is a complete washout, forcing drivers to take the long way round, potentially for years. What does it mean for tourism and businesses? The former Conservative Party leader Colin Craig is headed back to court following a ruling he sexually harassed his former press secretary. Twitter's asking why, so let's get an answer from him. Guess who's coming to dinner? A mashup of MPs and Chloe's dad. Takahe are soaring in numbers, and the All Black fans that are usually chasing the ball themselves, along with sticks and, well, probably the odd cat too.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leata with tēnei. A Catholic bishop involved in helping the Royal Commission into Abuse in State Care has offered his resignation to the Pope. The Pope will consider the resignation under a new law regarding the compulsory reporting of clerical sexual abuse. Ben Strang reports.
Bishop Charles Drennan is based in Palmerston North and is a member of Te Rōpū Tautoko, the group set up by the Catholic Church to liaise with the Royal Commission. RNZ understands the Church is considering Bishop Drennan's resignation under a law created by Pope Francis in May called You Are the Light of the World. The law makes clear that clerics must report any allegations of abuse or attempted cover-ups of abuse they encounter in the Church. 3 forms of sexual abuse are listed in the law: assault through use of power, assault of children, or making or distributing child pornography. The Pope is expected to accept the bishop's resignation tonight. The Catholic Church won't comment until that happens. This is Ben Strang.
A fundraiser hosted by Kapiti Rotary has been collecting money to help provide suicide prevention services to schools. The Deputy Principal of Otaki College, Hamish Wood, says teachers are having to give up their own time and money to get students seen. He says they recently had an at-risk student turned away from professional services.
The student was the highest need possible, and so we said, right, now it's time we need to get the local support services involved, and on the day they were too busy, they couldn't see them, and also when the meeting did take place, it didn't quite meet the point system at that time.
220 people attended the fundraiser, including representatives from 6 colleges across the region. At least $11,000 has been raised, with the money available for schools to use at their own discretion. Universities say they don't have the resources to cope with the ever-increasing demand from students for mental health support. The Vice-Chancellor of Victoria University says there's a massively rising tide of students suffering anxiety and depression, and it's making its job harder. University's NZ Chief Executive, Chris Whelan, says it's had to boost spending on student counselling by 25% in 5 years, but demand keeps growing.
We're not doing enough to actually monitor students earlier in their study lives. We're not doing enough around education and support to prevent issues appearing in the first place. To some extent, that is just a factor of how much resource we've actually got.
Chris Whelan from Universities NZ. Authorities are investigating a website offering degrees from a non-existent tertiary campus in Auckland. Newsroom has reported that the New Zealand College of Education address on Simon Street is an empty lot. The college website claims links to a French university and charges thousands of dollars for doctoral and master's degrees. The Domain Name Commissioner Brent Carey says Internet New Zealand stopped access to the site earlier today.
Law enforcement's brought this site to our attention, and we've followed up and we've actually suspended the domain name. And what that means is that the website's no longer able to be accessed on the internet.
Brent Carey says Internet New Zealand is trying to contact the owner of the domain name. A man has appeared in the Christchurch District Court charged with the murder of a farm worker in Rakaia. Tony Waldron, who was 29, was found dead at his Rakaia home north of Ashburton just over a fortnight ago. In a brief court appearance this afternoon, a 26-year-old man was granted name suppression and remanded in custody until his next appearance on October 21st. Detective Senior Sergeant Richard Kestad says the investigation is far from over and there is still a lot of work for police to do. He says their thoughts are with Mr Waldron's family and they're committed to providing them with answers. The police have been searching an area of the Selwyn riverbank in recent days. Aucklanders have bought less fuel since the regional fuel tax came in, with both petrol and diesel sales falling 7% in the year since the tax was introduced. The tax, which adds 11.5 cents to every litre of fuel sold in Auckland, raised $156 million in its first year, a little more than the $150 million expected. In the same time period, 8 million more trips were taken on buses, trains and ferries. Auckland Councillor for the Manukau ward, Efeso Collins, supports the shift towards public transport but voted against the regional fuel tax. He says it's a regressive tax and hurts his constituents disproportionately, some of whom are struggling to get by financially anyway.
Our people don't normally talk, and the poor don't normally complain. And so our people just wear what they have to wear. If it means they're having to pay extra in fuel costs to get their kids to school, then they'll just wear that as much as they can.
Auckland Councillor Efeso Collins. It's 5:05. Geordie Barrett will start at first five and Brodie Retallick returns from injury at lock for the All Blacks' third Rugby World Cup pool match against Namibia on Sunday in Tokyo. The selectors have again rung the changes, making 13 in total to the team that beat Canada on Wednesday night. Rugby reporter Joe Porter is in Japan.
Who would play first five if Richie Mo'unga and Bowden Barrett were rested or injured has been revealed, with Geordie Barrett starting in the number 10 jersey. Brodie Retallick returns at lock after 10 weeks on the sideline with a shoulder injury he picked up against the Springboks in Wellington. Sam Cane and Adi Savia start alongside Shannon Frizzell in the loose forwards, with captain Kieran Reid getting a rest. Lock Sam Whitelock takes over as skipper. Aaron Smith starts at halfback, with Ben Smith at fullback, and George Bridge and Sevu Reece return to the wings. Anton Leonard-Brown and Jack Goodhue team up in the midfield, with the front row again rotating, with Joe Moody, Cody Taylor and Nepo Laulala to start Sunday's game against Minnows Namibia. In Tokyo, Ko Joe Porter Aho.
In tonight's lone World Cup match, South Africa face Italy. The New Zealand women's basketball team will play at home for the first time in 4 years next month. The Tall Ferns, who have played only 4 tests in New Zealand in the last decade, will host China, South Korea and the Philippines in an Olympic qualifying series in Auckland. And New Zealand has been drawn to play in Venezuela in their Davis Cup men's tennis tie in March. New Zealand is taking part in the second tier of the men's tennis competition, which was revamped so more nations could compete in the world group. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Country Live takes us deep into northern King Country to a property where rescued animals thrive and children with disabilities and their families are welcome. Friday Night Live features RNZ music sessions with the incomparable Stan Walker. And with lead as our element of the week, we have a sonic tonic dedicated to the art of writing. That's Nights with me, Anna Thomas, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel mainly fine, but isolated showers in Northland tonight. Waikato to Taranaki, including Central High Country, also Bay of Plenty. Fine tonight, a few showers tomorrow, then rain in the evening. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay mainly fine, but some rain tomorrow evening. Whanganui to Wellington, also Wairarapa, Marlborough and Nelson. Fine spells tonight, cloud increasing tomorrow. A period of rain, briefly heavy with a strong southerly change. For Bulla and Westland, showers tonight, rain tomorrow morning as well, heavy for a time, then becoming fine. Canterbury and Otago, excluding Clutha, fine tonight, rain spreading north tomorrow morning, followed by a few showers. Snow down to 500 metres for a time. Fiordland, also Southland and Clutha, showers in Fiordland, mainly fine elsewhere at first. Rain tonight with heavy falls, easing to a few showers tomorrow morning. Snow lowering to 300 metres for a time. And the Chatham Islands, a few showers, rain tomorrow night. RNZ National, it's coming up to 9 minutes past 5.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. There's concerns tonight it could take years to rebuild a 400-metre stretch of road between Whanganui and Ratahi after a slip caused it to completely collapse in both directions. Now, if you're watching, the pictures of the slip are quite extraordinary and dramatic. They're similar to a broken road at the epicentre of an earthquake. The paraparas on State Highway 4 are now closed from south of Ratahi to the Field Tracks intersection for the foreseeable future. Now, that means drivers will face detours of up to an hour to get to Ratahi from Whanganui and the reverse. Tom Cloak is the National Road Carriers CEO. He went as far as he could along the road this afternoon and he told me it looked like a bomb had gone off.
What's happened is the piece of road has the slip has taken the road completely out. There's no way you can see even where the road was or is. It's taken it completely, it's gone, completely gone. It's like a bomb's gone off and the road's just gone. There's no visual sight of the road except halfway down the hill there's a couple of road cones stuck in the middle of it.
So we're talking about State Highway 4 here, Tom?
State Highway 4, that's the road between Wanganui and Ratahi. A great tourist route as well.
Is it both sides of the road, and where's it slid off to?
The road has completely gone. The road's gone into the river. And the whole slip has gone into the river. It would be, on estimated, probably about 200 to 250 metres wide, and it just looks like a hill with just nothing on it. There's no remnants of the road left at all. It's just a cold face. You go to the end of the face, and there's a big, probably 20-metre drop, and there was the road. There's just a face. And I've only seen the southern side, not the northern side. I couldn't get to the northern side today, but I'm told the northern side's the same. There's just nothing left.
So what happened? Did you just wake up and it was gone, or did it happen over a period of time?
No, there started cracks in the road on Monday, and by Wednesday they closed the road. The cracks started to get really big and closed the road. Thursday it started to worsen, and last night the road went completely. So thank goodness it happened fairly quickly, and the road was closed because we could have lost somebody on the slope. So
it's a lucky break that someone wasn't seriously injured or killed with this.
Very, very, very lucky. And unfortunately the fix is going to be a long time, so that's going to have a huge economic impact into the Whanganui, Rarahi, King Country area. Huge impact. And not only that, there's it's the quickest link for medical and emergencies. So to get round it for heavy vehicles especially is another hour, and they've got a light vehicle track which they call Fields Track, only suitable really for light vehicles. But today there's not many of those people using that track, so I would imagine that most people are using State Highway 1.
Okay, so for people who are unfamiliar, this road, State Highway 4, goes from Whanganui up to Ohauakuni, right? So
Rugby goes to Rugby.
Yeah, and how many trucks would be on there of a day?
Look, I don't know. It is a service centre. It is a service route, and there's a lot servicing that rural community, plus some coming servicing from the north to the south as well into Whanganui. So the economic impact to service that area now is going to be huge, and it's going to be huge going forward because there's really nothing suitable to a short alternative route.
Is this another Manawatu Gorge situation we've got on our hands then?
I wouldn't like to go that far. There's going to have to be looked at a lot of options, and my gut feeling is that where the road is at the moment, I don't believe it's repairable. So there'll have to be probably an alternative option to bypass it.
So you don't think they can just patch or rebuild the section that's gone west, that they'll have to reroute the road around that part?
I've seen a lot of slips in my time and been on a lot of these type of experiences over the years, and I think this is probably one of the worst I've seen.
You say you reckon it's going to take a bit of time to get it done. What do you reckon? How long?
I'm not prepared to put a figure on, but let's say we'll be talking not months. We won't be talking months.
So weeks to get it fixed, you think, or many months?
We'll probably start using that word years.
Wow. What's that going to mean for the communities there?
That's going to have a huge economic impact. And even, families getting their children to school, it's now another hour plus to get them to school where they were sort of 20 minutes away. So it's a huge impact on families just doing their daily business. So the economic impacts are going to be huge, not only to the King Country region, but also the Whanganui area as well. So it's going to have a huge impact.
Is that going to make everything that's delivered more expensive as well? Because that's more petrol and more time too.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, the economic impact. And the freight's only a small part of it, but it's just the social impact as well.
Yes.
Social and economic.
So basically, if you're talking about Ratahi, while it's not completely cut off, this is going to really lessen the through traffic and the business that may come from that.
It's not only that, it's also the business going into the ski fields as well, into Awakuni and places like that. It's going to make it far more difficult, especially from people coming from, say, Taranaki and would use the parapara. Now they've got to go up State Highway 1. So, it's adding probably another hour onto their journey to go and have some rest and recreation time. So it's all those sorts of things as well. So, the King Country is a great tourist spot, and it's going to have an impact on that. We're probably lucky in one respect, the road has gone out, which creates urgency. So therefore I would imagine the Transport Agency will give it full urgency because there is no road left. So in one respect it's probably lucky that it has gone completely rather than a flip down to one lane or something like that.
So Tom, have you picked up...
It does create urgency.
Have you been on the phone, Tom, talking to politicians in NZTA or anyone that you can rally around?
Oh, no, we've been talking to the agency, and that's why we went up to have a look today, and that conversation will go on again next week. And we're just hopeful especially the politicians in the King Country and in Wanganui will do some decent lobbying for their constituents, because they need to. Now's the time to stand up and be counted.
Tom Cloak there, and those pictures of the road, we'll put them up on our Checkpoint Facebook page and also the RNZ website. It's almost 17 minutes after 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. I really love to hear from you if you are cut off by that slip. What kind of difference is it going to make to your life? You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. The government is scrapping a major barrier for refugees from Africa and the Middle East to resettle in New Zealand that's long been touted as racist by migrant advocates. The policy ruled that people from certain countries had to already have family living in New Zealand before making the move. Today, Immigration Minister Ian Lees-Galloway confirmed he's ditching the policy. Political reporter Charlie Drever was in Palmerston North and filed this report.
New Zealand National Refugee Association Treasurer Jean-Christophe Masimba came to New Zealand from the Republic of Congo. He was working for the president when war broke out.
When we left our country, it's not... we don't have choice. No time to think, just to save and to go out. So just to remain in life.
Under the old policy, refugees from Africa and the Middle East were theoretically given 14% each of the total refugee quota. But Ian Lees-Galloway says in practice, it was nowhere near that.
In the 2017-18 year, the Middle East allocation was in fact only 1.2%, and the Africa allocation was only 5.3%. That is because of the impact of the current requirement of a family link for people from Africa and the Middle East.
Ian Lees-Galloway says the old policy, introduced by National a decade ago, wasn't serving the country's interests, and now the allocation for the two regions will be 15%.
We want to be a good international citizen. We want to prioritise the people who have the greatest need. There is significant need in Africa and the Middle East, and it was getting in the way of us being able to do that. I'm very pleased to be able to say today that we're getting rid of it.
Manawatu Refugee Voice President Tamam Tamim had lived in Palestine and Syria before coming to New Zealand. He says having more people from the Middle East in New Zealand will help other refugees settle.
If I came to Palmerston North and I have someone from my community who is from Syria or Palestine, he can speak my language. When we came here, our English is not perfect, we just learn. Do you think our life will be easier? Absolutely, it will be easier.
But the National Party's immigration spokesperson, Stuart Smith, says the opposition doesn't support the move and backed the old one.
We were focusing on our region with refugees, and I think that was the right thing to do. But, they are the government, they have the right to make those decisions.
But Green Party MP, Golriz Garaman, who came to the country as a refugee from Iran, says the change is needed to remove what is basically a Donald Trump Muslim ban. She says the next step for the Greens will be to reform the family reunification policy by increasing the overall refugee quota and widening the definition of what counts as family.
Well, we know it makes a huge change for refugees in terms of their mental health and their ability to integrate here, to have a family member as well.
Immigration Minister Ian Lees-Galloway couldn't confirm those changes today, but says he will speak about the proposal soon. For Checkpoint, Ko Charlie Drever, DNA.
Universities say they don't have the resources to cope with the ever-increasing demand from students for mental health support. The Vice-Chancellor of Victoria University says there's a massively rising tide of university students suffering anxiety and depression, and it's making their job harder. Universities say they've had a boost to spending on student counselling by a quarter in the past 5 years, but demand keeps growing. Hamish Cardwell has the story.
Rose had been able to manage her anxiety during the first years at university, but when she got to honours, the pressure ramped up and she started to unravel. But when Rose, not her real name, tried to get help at her university, she struggled to find out what was available and where to go.
Trying to navigate the system was really hard. I wasn't sure where the supports were or what they were. So going on that journey to access them actually took a really long time. And it was really tough being in that position of being quite overwhelmed, quite anxious, lacking confidence, to actually put myself out there and find help and support that was available.
Rose's struggle is an increasingly common story in New Zealand universities. The Vice-Chancellor of Victoria University says it's being inundated by young people suffering from poor mental health. Sean Robinson from the Mental Health Foundation says universities have been caught short by the increase in demand.
And I just think it's been sort of left flat-footed in terms of its response, and so it's not doing anywhere near enough.
Universities NZ, which represents all 8 tertiary institutions, says it's had to boost spending on student counselling by 25% since 2013, but demand keeps growing. Its chief executive, Chris Whelan, says it's now spending more than $18 million a year on mental health support, but there's only so much it can do without more funds.
Well, the New Zealand university sector is now funded on a per-student basis below the rest of the OECD. We're about 27% less than Australia, and only about half the funding per student of, say, a country like the United States. So, yes, we are absolutely struggling on the resourcing that we have.
Youthline's chief executive, Shay Ronald, says students are under tremendous pressure to succeed in their studies, but many young people feel isolated and lonely.
One of the biggest reasons for people contacting us on the helpline is isolation. A lot of people don't have support around them, don't have people they can talk to about what's going on for them, don't feel they live in a community where it is okay to not feel okay and it is okay to kind of get help from the people around them.
Ms. Ronald says institutions like universities support young people suffering poor mental health who don't have their peer groups and family to call on. Victoria University of Wellington Student Association President Tamitha Paul says the mental health issues at universities are just a microcosm of the wider problem in society. But she says there's no silver bullet.
We need talking therapies, we need good community infrastructure, we need peer support, we need good infrastructure in that our rents aren't absolutely ridiculous and that our buses show up on time and that we're not going to feel exploited when we go to work, or we don't have to feel like if we go to town we're going to be sexually assaulted. Because mental health is such a holistic thing, there are a lot of solutions and there's never going to be one answer to that.
Universities NZ Chris Whelan says it's currently working out whether its mental health spending is as effective as it can be, and once that project's done, it will take it to the government. For Checkpoint, Ko Hamish Cardwell aho.
There's some brand new changes to the All Blacks line-up against Namibia on Sunday, with all eyes on returning forward Brodie Retallick. It's the first time he'll run out in black since late July, when he dislocated his shoulder against the Springboks. Coach Steve Hansen is using the match against the Minnow Nation to rest key players and try some new things, such as playing Jordie Barrett at first 5. But today he was sounding relieved that Brodie Retallick can finally burn some energy out on the field.
Well, he's been annoying, particularly over the last couple of training runs. He's decided it's time to be an annoying guy again, so that's always a good sign. And he's counting it down. He knows how long it is till he gets to play. He's been counting for the last 5 days, he tells me every day. So he's pretty excited, and he should be.
Steve Hansen there. We can go now to our RNZ rugby specialist reporter, Joe Porter, who's standing by in Tokyo. Joe, so 2 Barretts get a rest and 1 gets a start in a new position.
Yeah, that's right. So, Scott and Bowden get a rest. Of course, they've played a lot of minutes so far this World Cup. And Geordie Barrett, the youngest of the Barrett clan, or the Barrett brothers at least, gets a start at first 5'8", a position he's not really played much at all since high school. He's had to fill in a couple of times at number 10 for the Hurricanes when they've had injuries, but he's certainly not played at first 5 for the All Blacks before. So, a big game for young Geordie Barrett, stepping into the famous All Blacks number 10 jersey. And he's probably the biggest first 5 we've ever had, just about too. He's 6'3", this fellow, and well over 100 kilos. So, it could be quite interesting thing to see the youngest Barrett brother running out at first 5. Very special day for him and a big challenge, of course.
So who backs him up if he needs to go off?
Well, that's TJ Perenara, usually a halfback, of course. He's on the bench as well as Brad Weber, so 2 halfbacks on the bench, but TJ won't fill in the halfback role at all. He is simply on the bench to back up Geordie Barrett at first 5, and no doubt TJ Perenara will at some point get a run at first 5, so it's likely to see Geordie Barrett and TJ Perenara essentially playing off to become the 3rd choice backup first 5, just in case Richie Mo'unga or Bowden Barrett both go down, touch wood, at some stage during this tournament. So yeah, Geordie Barrett gets the start, TJ Perenara will come off the bench and get some time at first 5, and it's somewhat of a trial match between those two, I guess, to see who takes over as the real 3rd choice number 10.
Okay, so we've got veterans, Aaron and Ben Smith in the back line, but the rest, well, they're all freshies, aren't they?
Yeah, essentially, apart from George Bridge and Sevu Reece on the wings, Steve Hansen said today that they are their first choice wings going forward. Rico Ioane, Geordie Barrett and Ben Smith fighting, I guess, to try and take over their positions. But at this point in time, George Bridge and Sevu Reece will start in the knockout stages on the wings, and they come back for this game to get more game time under their belt and prepare for what will be the knockout stages and the biggest match since South Africa against Italy next week. As you can see, the Disney train is about to go past us behind me. If you are watching on telly, that's the All Blacks are having to catch today. But yes, a lot of changes throughout the rest of the All Blacks. Brody Retallick back, of course. Wonderful to see him back playing for the All Blacks, and yeah, he's been tearing up a storm at training, annoying all the halfbacks like Aaron Smith, and really pissing them off, excuse my French, because he's been that keen to go. So a lot of other guys, Shannon Frizzell's in the loose forwards alongside Artie Savia, and Sam Cane comes back for the first time since South Africa. Kieran Reid, captain, gets a rest. Sam Whitelock takes over as skipper. That's of course nodding towards next year when Kieran Reid leaves and Sam Whitelock is probably going to be the next All Blacks captain. The front row's completely changed from the game against Canada. Joe Moody is now in, Nepal Alala at prop and Cody Taylor at hooker. So again, lots of rotation, resting guys, a short turnaround between Canada and Namibia, and a chance for more combinations and more guys to get some game time before they head into the real crunch stage of the pool matches. Italy, of course, they'll want to win and win big before the quarterfinals. Could be against Ireland, Scotland, Samoa, Japan. We're not sure at this stage, but yeah, the All Blacks rotating their squad, keeping people fresh, hoping no one gets injured before the crunch time of the tournament.
It was interesting listening to Steve Hansen there, who clearly, well, he jokingly was saying that Brody Retallick was driving him around the twist, obviously keen to get back into action. I mean, Brody must have been climbing the walls over the past few weeks for sure, eh?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's been 10 weeks since he played, and if anyone loves to play rugby, I know that seems sort of bizarre in an All Black sense, but it is Brody Retallick. He just loves playing the game. He can't wait to get back out there. He loves training. He loves rubbing his teammates into the dirt. He loves competition, and he just loves the niggle. He loves the game. He loves the confrontation. He loves the physicality. He's a real boost for this All Black side. He's the best lock in the world when he's on his game. He's maybe the best forward in world rugby when he's on his game. So certainly a massive boost to have him back for the All Blacks, and Coach Steve Hansen will be very, very pleased that he's back in the frame 2 weeks before they expected him to be. So he gets a few runs under his belt before the quarterfinals. Very good timing from Brody Retallick. Very fast healing too.
Hey, so 63 zip against Canada. I mean, how are we expecting it to go with Namibia?
Yeah, another big scoreline. Namibia aren't as strong as Canada, so we're looking at 100 points plus possibly, although the team has been rotated a lot, so again, it could be somewhat messy at times, but what Steve Hansen will be looking for is an improvement in skill set execution from that Canadian game. 24 turnovers in that game, 12, 13, 15 odd drop balls, a lot of those unforced errors. I know it was very, very humid in Awita under the roof. It will be slightly drier in Tokyo with the open stadium, but they'll be looking for them to really cut out those knock-ons, basically catch the ball first, secure the ball, and then look to make the next decision rather than thinking too far ahead and making silly mistakes. So he'll just want a lift in execution this game. The All Blacks left about 40 points on the park against Canada. They left about 4 or 5 tries out there. So he'll want to see the All Blacks this time round making sure that they put the Namibians to the sword and don't let their foot off the throat. And instead of having 20 minutes of good play here and 20 minutes there, we want to see 80 minutes of full execution and a really strong performance for the full match this time round from the All Blacks.
And Joe, while you have been standing there, for people who are watching, the Disney train, I kid you not, the Disney train has wombled past behind you. Did I catch some Mickey Mouse ears on that train? And do the All Blacks, this will make my day if I'm right, do the All Blacks catch that train?
The All Blacks certainly do. Their hotel, the Hilton Tokyo, and here comes the train again. The Hilton Tokyo is within this big Disneyland complex here in Tokyo, so the All Blacks are having to catch this train to get to and from their training ground and various other places as well. They of course have buses to get around, but yes, they've been catching the Disney train. It goes around here on a monorail loop, and some of them have been checking out the sites. We've got Tokyo Disneyland, we've got Disney Sea here as well. Many people, and the fans here are wonderful. You see all the locals dressing up as Esmeralda and Rapunzel and Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and Donald Duck. Many varieties, of course. Little kids and the adults are getting into it too. So what would be particularly special is imagine seeing Brodie Retallick and Sam Whitelock, giants among men, walking amongst these Japanese crowd with Mickey Mouse ears on. Wouldn't that be brilliant?
I can't wait. Thanks, Joe. Joe Porter there, all the way from Tokyo, standing, well, somewhere near the Disney train, clearly, because it keeps going through our shot. And coming up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, the population of endangered flightless Takahe soars past the 400 mark for the first time in a century. 4 Invercargill dogs take on the All Blacks. Yep, more on that later. And Colin Craig, well, there really is just one question there. Why? We'd love your feedback, particularly if you were near that 400-metre slip on State Highway 4. If you're in the Ratahi, Wanganui, King Country area, how do you think you might be affected? You can text us on 2101 or you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us Checkpoint, or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It is time now to go to the headlines with Susanna in the Enchanted Forest, aka our Wellington studio.
A Catholic bishop involved in helping the Royal Commission into Abuse and State Care has offered his resignation to the Pope. The Pope will consider the resignation under a new law regarding the compulsory reporting of clerical sexual abuse. Bishop Charles Drennan is based in Palmerston North and is a member of Te Rōpū Tautoko, the group set up by the Catholic Church to liaise with the Royal Commission. RNZ understands the Church is considering Bishop Drennan's resignation under a law created by Pope Francis in May called You Are the Light of the World. The law makes clear that clerics must report any allegations of abuse or attempted cover-ups of abuse they encounter in the church. There are fears that part of a highway from Whanganui to Raitihi will be closed for a number of years after a major slip. Parapara Road on State Highway 4 is closed after the slip caused it to collapse in both directions. The National Road Carriers Chief Executive, Tom Cloak, told Checkpoint the road closure will have a huge economic impact on the Whanganui and Raitihi communities. A Kapiti Coast fundraiser has collected more than $11,000 for suicide prevention services in schools. The Deputy Principal of Otaki College, Hamish Wood, says teachers are having to give up their own time and money to get students seen. He says they recently had an at-risk student turned away from professional services. Students' needs for mental health support is stretching the country's resources, with universities saying they can't cope with the ever-increasing demand. The Vice-Chancellor of Victoria University says there's a massively rising tide of students suffering anxiety and depression, and it's making its job harder. University's NZ Chief Executive Chris Whelan says it's had to boost spending on student counselling by 25% in the past 5 years, but demand keeps growing. A website offering degrees from a non-existent tertiary campus in Auckland is under investigation. Newsroom has reported the New Zealand College of Education address on Simon Street is an empty lot. The college website claims links to a French university and charges thousands of dollars for doctoral and master's degrees. Those are the latest news headlines from RNZ National. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Thanks, Susanna. If you're just tuning in this Friday, this is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. And joining me now for business news is Nona Peltier. Hi, Nona. Inland Revenue, so they're going to start a crackdown on hospitality industry. What's prompted it and what are they up to?
Well, they just recently took a multi-year investigation of tax evasion against a family that owned Thai restaurants, 20 restaurants apparently. Anyway, they found that these people had been accepting cash as payment and then not putting it through the till. In the end, one of the members of the family was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months in jail. Another 3 were given home detention, and all 5 of them have been ordered to repay or pay the tax department $2.2 million. So it's a lot of tax evasion there.
So that's prompted them to turn the spotlight on other avenues, has it?
That's right. And they're concerned that the hospitality industry, and it's just, the bars, the restaurants, those sorts of things, they are going to be targeted. They're going to be looking for this type of activity. They want to make sure that money is, in fact, going through the till. They're asking the public for help. So if your local bar and restaurant, if you see the cash going into someone's pocket rather than in the till, you're to call Inland Revenue right away. And or if you're a business that has had some, perhaps hasn't always put the money where it belonged, to contact Inland Revenue and have a chat with them. So I guess presumably they would rather you come clean than how they find out later on, because they're quite serious about it. They said they're going to track it down. The hidden economy is estimated to be worth about, university experts have sort of assessed it at a conservative $800 million a year. Others say it's $1 billion. The Australian government thinks it's about 3% of GDP. So it could be a very big number when you start to add it all in.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of change. All right, so gloomy economy. We've heard a bit about this, people feeling sort of down in the dumps about the economy. So it's got banks talking about what they can expect from the Reserve Bank. So what's the chatter?
Well, they're saying that before the Reserve Bank starts going through things like quantitative easing, so in other words, pumping more cash into the system, they're hoping that the bank explores all possibilities with the OCR and is suggesting, now they're not suggesting it's going to happen, but they're suggesting that the Reserve Bank should look to move interest rates to below 0 to as low as negative to as low as negative 0.75%. So that's 0.75% into the negative territory. They said that would be a preferable measure to take before looking at some of these other options, which could be costly longer term. I mean, if you pump money into the economy, it can cause all kinds of distortions in terms of people chasing assets and that kind of thing. So, it's pretty dark out there right now. We have heard that the U.S. economy, it looks like it's weakening. It could tip into recession. We had those reports overnight as well in Germany, the same story. It really comes down to these trade war. This is not helping anybody. The uncertainty is putting off investment decisions. There's tariffs being imposed, for example, in Europe on cheeses and wine exports, and it's really hurting. It's 25% tariff. That's a lot on, a bit of already quite expensive cheese. So never mind. So our local economy...
I was going to say, on the back of that cheery news, Nona, was it a happy day on the market?
It really was, to be honest. And the reason why is because other people's bad luck is our good luck. It's always that way, isn't it? You get swings and roundabouts. And on this hand, we're up. Our Kiwi dollar is strengthened against the US dollar, which weakened on their weak economic data. They've got US non-farm payrolls. That's their jobs data coming out later today in New York, and we'll see what happens with that. If it disappoints, the dollar could fall further. That's the US dollar. So we're at 63.2 US cents. So we were like 62 cents earlier this week.
63.
We're back at 63. That's a big hike. 93.6 Australian, 51.2 British pence. And on the markets, we rose 2/3% today. So yesterday we were down like over 1%. Today we're back up again, 72 points up, ending the week at 10,893.
Thanks, Nona. Have a great weekend. That's Nona Peltier with our business wrap. Let's head offshore now, and a knife-wielding employee has killed 3 officers and 1 administrative worker at police headquarters in the centre of Paris. The attacker, who's not been named, was shot dead by police. The killings come just a day after police across France went on strike over increasing violence towards staff. The BBC's Lucy Williamson reports from Paris.
The threat today came with a familiar face, a police IT worker and colleague of 20 years, who brought a knife into the police headquarters this lunchtime and killed 4 people. He was shot dead by an officer just a few months out of training, who was then seen sinking to his knees and crying.
We can't know what went through his head. We are not safe anywhere, even at police headquarters.
With no clear sense of a motive, a criminal investigation has been launched into why a 45-year-old IT worker should attack his colleagues like this.
This man was known to his colleagues, had never shown any behavioural problems, never shown any warning signs. Then today he committed this string of murders.
This afternoon, investigators searched the attacker's home. Police say he recently converted to Islam, but that hasn't been linked to the inquiry. His wife has been taken in for questioning, along with at least 1 other person. Tonight, investigators are starting to unpick the story behind this unexpected attack. The police here say they're already struggling to cope after years of terrorism, protests and public assault. Protecting France is taking its toll, they say, not expecting they'd need to protect the safest place in Paris from someone they already knew.
Lucy Williamson in Paris. And back home now, and former Conservative Party leader Colin Craig says his decision to appeal a court ruling that found he'd sexually harassed his former press secretary is not driven by revenge. Mr Craig says challenging last month's High Court decision will be done on points of law and what he describes as issues around evidence. Justice Hinton found that Colin Craig and his former employee Rachel McGregor had both defamed each other, but she also ruled that Craig had sexually harassed Ms McGregor with letters and messages that had clear sexual content, were inappropriate and were unwelcome. And Mr Craig's sexual conduct had a detrimental effect on his former press secretary and contributed to the serious illness she suffered at the end of her employment. I asked Colin Craig if the focus of his appeal was about trying to overturn the finding of sexual harassment.
Certainly part of it is. I mean, I was very happy with the court finding that Ms McGregor had lied about me being guilty of trying to make someone commit suicide, of being cruel or nasty to another woman. Again, she was wrong when she said that I hadn't paid her, and again that I hadn't negotiated pay agreements. So I was happy with all of those things. Obviously, I have a different view on the last issue. The court did find partly in my favour. I think that there are some evidentiary issues that haven't been properly taken into account. So that is part of the appeal as well.
OK, so the court did find that you sexually harassed her. But you did, didn't you? You were sending her texts and unsolicited letters with sexual comments in them.
Well, of course, that's getting into the weeds, so to speak, in the sense of these are the issues that will be before the court. But the short answer is I obviously don't think that I did. And the reason for that is that the law is about whether things are welcome or not. And I think
the court says it was unwelcome attention from you. I mean, one of the series of letters you sent to Ms McGregor, here's one in part. Physically, I do desire you. There are sometimes I just want to kiss you and, well, go further. How would you characterise that letter?
Well, again, if it's someone says, and this is what the case did happen, someone is sending you communications back saying, wow, thanks so much for the letter. I'm rereading it and rereading it.
Let's be clear here. The court said that this was unwelcome attention. So just remind us, what did the text say, that the one you sent her about sleeping between her legs?
So, again, that's just not true. There wasn't a text to that effect. And so those are the sorts of things that you hope will get cleared up. Now, the court, I don't think, cleared that one up particularly well. Obviously, I'm very happy with the findings on the issues that they found in my favour.
They also
again,
found you guilty of defaming her as well. But on the point of sexual harassment, it's basically a 3-check test. Were there sexual comments, verbal or in writing? Tick. Did they occur in a workplace environment? Tick. Were they unwelcome? Well, the court says tick, and they caused her harm. So...
Well, I think your test is wrong. I have to say, legally, I don't think you're using the right test. But you can sexually harass someone when it's not a workplace, let's be clear. So I think you are misunderstanding the law.
That was the definition that the court was using in terms of assessing sexual harassment under the Act.
Well, actually, I think your definition that you're using, the test you're using there, is wrong. But one thing I think we are agreed on is the test that comes down to whether something's welcome or not. And so, as part of the appeal, and remember that we've already said that really most of this appeal is about issues of law, but as part of the appeal, I do think the evidence did show that Ms McGregor welcomed communications and sent communications which you're not quoting and not reading out, which, to be fair, I think you probably should, which were very effusive and very welcoming. And so
the court found otherwise, and that is the whole point. The court says this was unwelcome attention. I'm wondering why you can't let this go. Can you just not let her go?
Well, I think, Lisa, that's the wrong question to ask. The question when you are making an appeal is, did the court get it right? That's the question that an appeal is all about. So I think you're trying to make this into some sort of other issue. But when you're appealing, it's simply about, has a judgment accurately captured the law and has it actually accurately reflected the facts? And in this particular case, I'm appealing mostly on issues of law because I think that the court did get the law wrong, and I'm appealing on some issues of fact because I believe that there were some facts that were overlooked. That's all an appeal is. It's simply a process whereby you check what the court has found, what one judge has found is put before a panel of 3, and they then look over it and say whether they agree or not. That's the whole process of an appeal.
This is not the only ruling that regards you as having sexually harassed Rachel McGregor, though, is it?
Well, it's the only one that I'm appealing right now at this moment. But yes, there is another finding in another case which is also under appeal. Once again, it's before the court, and so I'm reluctant to comment on that either, except to say that it's a very similar situation where most of the appeal really is about issues of law, but notwithstanding that there are some matters of fact that I don't think the court correctly
Have you given any consideration what this ongoing court action is doing to Rachel McGregor?
Well, look, I think that's a good question, but it's one that needs to be asked of Ms McGregor because it needs to be remembered she is the one who chose to take this to court. And the judge was very clear in that. She put that proposal to Ms McGregor's lawyers, very good lawyers, and they acknowledged it. This is Ms McGregor's proceeding, and she chose to put this into a courtroom.
It's your appeal, though. It's your appeal having already involved her in other court proceedings as a witness. So what consideration have you given to the effect this is going to have on Rachel McGregor? If any, have you considered that?
Again, let's just be very clear. I haven't involved her in any court proceeding as a witness. So I think you need to be a bit fairer in your question, don't you? Because you're making a proposal as to me involving her when I haven't done that. I've never called her as a witness yet. So let's be fair about the question.
She has been called as a witness. She's been called in a witness that cases that involve you. And so as a consequence, she's had a number of court appearances. So
I acknowledge that, but your question was, why did I keep involving her? So to be fair, the only case where you could even try and say I have involved her is this one. But she was the one who chose to make this a court proceeding. I did not want this to go to court. I did not serve a court proceeding. And as the court correctly recorded, this was really her proceeding.
And this is your appeal.
Court, she had, yes, but when you take a matter to court, as she has chosen to do, You need to be realistic about the process. She's got good lawyers. They would have told her that a lot of court cases aren't just decided on the first hearing.
If you win this in court, do you actually think it is going to change the public's view of you in any way?
Well, certainly it's very important for me as an individual person that findings about me are correct. And I know it's important for my family. Obviously, these are decisions that are made in close conjunction with my wife, Helen. And so it's important at that level. I don't control the media, and some people in the media like to have a good go at me. That's fine. More important to me is just that there is a correct finding at the end of the day.
Do you still care about Rachel McGregor?
Oh, look, I do, and as I said, I really, it was my evidence very clearly in court that I could see no value in this case ever going to court. But she had the right to take it there, and I respect that. Hopefully she respects the right that I've got to go to appeal to get things corrected.
And to be clear, the High Court judgment also found that Colin Craig defamed Rachel McGregor on a number of occasions, including by suggesting that she had made false claims of sexual harassment and she was a liar. Checkpoint asked Rachel McGregor for an interview. She declined and referred us to her lawyer, Linda Clark, who also declined to speak. It is about 10 minutes away from 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Keen for your feedback, as always, on anything you've heard on the program this evening. You can text us 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. The population of endangered flightless Takahe has soared past the 400 mark for the first time in at least a century. The Department of Conservation says a record breeding season that produced 65 juvenile birds has pushed their numbers up to 418. And as Andrew Digby from DOC told our reporter Sarah Robson, that's pretty good going for a bird that was thought to be extinct until it was rediscovered in 1948.
I think, as far as I know, the Takahe is the only bird which has been declared extinct twice, and it's pretty amazing that it's come back from such, everyone thought it was gone, and now to reach those sort of numbers, and it's the sort of numbers that we're thinking of when we start to relax a little bit more about populations from a genetic health point of view. There's always this ballpark figure of 500 birds, and when you start to get to those sort of numbers, you can start to relax a little bit about genetics, but when you start from such a small base, you have to obviously be pretty vigilant throughout.
Yeah, I guess, how has the Takahe recovery program worked to, build up the population?
So one of the really crucial things in recent years has just been the captive rearing, and Takahe population was not going up until recently, and in probably the last 6-7 years or so, we've made some real gains at Burwood Takahe Centre near Tiano, and it's basically a Takahe farm, and we've got very good at producing large numbers of Takahe there. So that's a key part, and also just to have more birds at wild sites, so bigger sites. So we have birds in the Murchison Mountains, but now we have Takahe at Kaharangi, and that's a really important part of our program.
Yeah, and about 2/3 of the population, as I understand it, are on the mainland kind of secure sanctuaries or in island sanctuaries. How important are those protected areas to maintaining those population numbers or growing them even?
Yeah, so they're crucial. So they've been really important, especially over the last 20 years or so, for just being a secure, safe place where we knew that Takahe were not going to go extinct. These island sites have been the mainstay of the population during that time. We have variable population growth on those islands. Some do quite well, some don't do very well, and we kind of want to make sure that we get more and more Takahe in real sort of upland, real native grassland areas in these big wild sites like Kaharangi. But having said that, those insurance sites, those secure sites are really important to us.
Why is the Takahe so special?
Yeah, the Takahe is an amazing bird, and it's one I think it doesn't get enough credit. It deserves a lot more attention than it gets. It's a unique bird. It's the largest rail in the world for a start. It's really unusual to have a rail, which is normally a wetland, a swampland bird, a lowland bird, up in the mountains. It's pretty amazing to see Takahe in their natural habitat. And their natural habitat would have actually been all over the South Island of New Zealand, not just up in the mountains. It would have been down near the estuaries and rivers and that sort of thing as well. So it's a really special bird, and it's one that I think we need to sort of value a lot more.
And that was, who was that from the Department of Conservation? That was Andrew Digby from the Department of Conservation, who was speaking to our reporter Sarah Robson there. Let's go back to the Rugby World Cup now. Could some of the All Blacks' biggest fans be 4 dogs in All Blacks jerseys from Invercargill? When the Southland Times called for readers to send in pictures of fans watching the World Cup, we're not sure that they were counting on Molly, Max, Willow and Winston. Nicola Pole and her flatmate Vanessa sent in a photo of their furry posse. I asked Nicola if all the dogs are hers.
Well, it's my 2 dogs. Well, one dog's my flatmate and the other's mine. And I've also got my parents' dogs at the moment because they're away on holiday. So I just lined them up and sat them down with their wee All Blacks jackets on and said, this is the All Blacks game, it's time for the haka and let's watch.
And
they sat down and we watched.
They all do look like they're actually watching the television, are they?
Yes, they are. There may have been a treat in there at some point, at some stage, but no, they're all sitting there intrigued.
So tell me their names and what kind of dogs are they?
Well, in the picture from left to right, it's Max and Molly, and they're actual brother and sister. They're my parents' dogs. And then you have Willow and then Winston, and they are all Bichon cross and Maltese.
Vanessa, which dog's yours?
Mine's the one on the very right, and he's actually the oldest. He's actually 11 years old today.
Happy birthday to him. And are they actually interested in the All Blacks?
Definitely, to be honest, they did love the treats there, and they didn't mind the coats on them, actually, because we got them in the lead up to the All Blacks game. So we had a couple of trials, and they were just like, oh, yeah, this is cool, and just kind of cruised around in the jacket. So we thought, oh, yeah, let's pop it on for the night. So, and we make sure we watch all the games, so they're used to the rugby.
Where did these jackets come from? And really, they are divine. We should tell people they've got little stand-up white collars and the silver fern on the back of them with the All Blacks name. Where did you get these?
They came from the warehouse. So, yeah.
So they were a good bargain, weren't they?
A very good bargain at the warehouse.
And I'm glad you noticed they all had collars up because that's the way the photo had to be.
They look like... They look like canine superheroes.
I actually sent one of the jackets over to my brother in Brisbane, so his dog could wear one.
What has been their favourite game so far?
Oh, I'd have to say, I would definitely have to say the first game, which was the South Africa game. That was a real highlight. There was a lot of jumping, not so much by the dogs, probably more by the humans. So I would say that would be the highlight. But, I mean, the Canada game was another amazing show, wasn't it?
So what are the rules here? Do they get a treat every time there's a try or what?
Oh, gosh. They might have been a bit larger than that was in the Canada game. But, no, there's no rules, really. It's just... they can just sit and watch it.
I think the humans got more treats that night, actually. Yeah, there was lots of goodies up for grabs, food and drink.
So, who are they telling you are going to be in the final?
There's some...
Definitely the All Blacks.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's just who we're going to face, really. And we've been following the Japanese team as well with great interest, knowing that there's a couple of Southland blokes in there, Carl McDonald and Simon, who used to be involved with Academy. So I'm certainly, watching out for that team. But, who knows? It could go anyway. The one thing I'm betting, though, is Australia's not going to be in the final.
Ooh. Hey, you need one more. You need a 5th dog, and maybe it could be called Barrett.
I love it.
Love it.
That's awesome.
And that was Nicola Pole and her flatmate Vanessa speaking to us from Invercargill. And if you're listening on the radio, I really do encourage you to go back online and check out the cute picture of Molly, Max, Willow and Winston. It'll be on the Checkpoint Facebook page and RNZ website, all lined up in a row, looking very attentive at the All Blacks game there. And Winston, who's the one on the far right when you're looking at the photo, he seems particularly interested in the game. A lot of you have been getting in touch on various different issues. Now, we had an interview earlier in the program. This is about the 400-metre stretch of road on State Highway 4 between Whanganui and Ratahi that's been wiped out by a slip there. Some of you have got in touch. In fact, Mark Brimblecombe has sent us some photos. If you're listening, they're quite impressive. If you're watching, you'll be able to see them on the screen, but there's massive chunks of this road that seem to have slid down the side of a bank heading towards the river. So it's a monstrous chunk of road. There are several photos there if you're interested. We will also put them up on our Facebook page and website.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui ko Susana Lei ātawa tēnei. A Catholic bishop involved in helping the Royal Commission into Abuse in State Care has offered his resignation to the Pope. The Pope will consider Bishop Charles Drennan's resignation under a new law regarding the compulsory reporting of clerical sexual abuse. RNZ understands the Church is considering the bishop's resignation under a law created by Pope Francis in May called You Are the Light of the World. The law makes clear that clerics must report any allegations of abuse or attempted cover-ups of abuse they encounter in the Church. 3 forms of sexual abuse are listed in the law: assault through use of power, assault of children, or making or distributing child pornography. Based in Palmerston North, Bishop Drennan is a member of Te Rōpū Tautoko, the group set up by the Catholic Church to liaise with the Royal Commission. The Pope is expected to accept the bishop's resignation tonight. The Catholic Church won't comment until that happens. The government says it will be able to bring in more refugees from Africa and the Middle East thanks to a policy change. The government is scrapping the policy which meant refugees from Africa and the Middle East could only come to New Zealand if they already had family in the country. Refugees from those regions only have a 14% allocation each in the refugee quota. But the Immigration Minister Ian Lees-Galloway says those targets aren't being met.
In the 2017-18 year, the Middle East allocation was in fact only 1.2% and the Africa allocation was only 5.3%.
Ian Lees-Galloway says the allocation will now rise to 15%, which will be easier to meet now the family link requirement is gone. There are fears part of a highway from Whanganui to Raitihi will be closed for years after a major slip. The section of State Highway 4, known as the Paraparas, is closed after it collapsed in both directions. The National Road Carriers Chief Executive Tom Cloak told Checkpoint the road will have a huge economic impact on the Whanganui and Raitihi communities. Mr Cloak travelled on the road and says the area looked like a bomb site.
There's no way you can see even where the road was or is. It's taken it completely, it's gone, completely gone. It's like a bomb's gone off and the road's just gone. There's no visual sight of the road except halfway down the hill there's a couple of road cones stuck in the middle of it.
National Road Carriers Chief Executive Tom Cloak speaking to Checkpoint. People at a national secondary school's basketball tournament in Palmerston North this week may have been infected with measles. A person at the tournament from Monday to Wednesday has been confirmed to have measles and is now in isolation. The Mid-Central District Health Board's medical officer, Rob Weir, says anyone not immune to measles who was at the tournament should stay in isolation to prevent the further spread of the disease. Dr Weir says symptoms should show up between October the 7th and 16th. Hundreds of teenagers from throughout the country are attending the tournament, hosted at the Fly Palmy Arena. A group of Auckland University students have occupied one of its buildings today, demanding further action over white supremacy material. The university has come under increasing pressure to rid its campus of racism and white supremacy since refusing to order the removal of posters and stickers promoting a white nationalist group. The Auckland University Students' Association says today about 50 people occupied the clock tower where the Vice-Chancellor's office is to demand action. Its president, George Barton, says there's been an outpouring of support for removing that kind of material from campus.
The Vice-Chancellor needs to reflect on this and hear the message that students and so many others don't want these stickers on campus, and want action and one active commitment from the university on this.
George Barton says the Vice-Chancellor could and should have stated the posters have no place on the university and had them removed. A Canadian neurosurgeon has been awarded this year's Ryman Prize for his work helping people with debilitating spinal problems. The $250,000 international prize is awarded for work that has enhanced the quality of life for older people. The Ryman Prize was presented to Toronto neurosurgeon Michael Fellings at a ceremony in Auckland today. Dr. Fellings was chosen for his pioneering work for older people suffering from degenerative cervical myelopathy, known as DMC, the most common form of spinal cord injury. Symptoms generally begin in patients over 50 and is estimated to affect 1 in 10 people. As well as working on treatment and management of the condition, Dr. Fellings has worked to raise awareness of it within the medical profession. It's coming up to 6:05. To sport, and the All Blacks coach Steve Hansen says Brodie Retallick is back to his pesky best ahead of his return from injury at the Rugby World Cup. The Chiefs lock has been named to start in a revamped New Zealand side for their third match of the tournament against Namibia in Tokyo on Sunday. Retallick suffered a shoulder injury 10 weeks ago in a match against South Africa and was originally only expected to be back in time for the World Cup quarterfinals. Hansen says there's been a clear indication this week that Retallick was ready to return.
Well, he's been annoying, particularly over the last couple of training runs. He's decided it's time to be an annoying guy again, so that's always a good sign. And he's counting it down. He knows how long it is till he gets to play. He's been counting for the last 5 days. He tells me every day. He's pretty excited, and he should be.
Hansen has named Jordie Barrett to start at first 5 for the first time with the All Blacks, with second choice halfback TJ Perenara named on the bench as the backup number 10. Captain Kieran Reid has been rested for the match, and Adisa Veer starting at number 8, and lock Sam Whitelock leading the side for the 6th time. Tonight's lone World Cup match sees South Africa taking on Italy. Meanwhile, in domestic rugby, the North Harbour women are at home to Taranaki, while the Harbour men host Wellington. Arsenal are from 2 in football's Europa League. Last season's beaten finalists have cruised to a 4-0 win over Standard Liège in London. And earlier, Manchester United were held to a 1-1 draw by AZ Alkmaar in the Netherlands. That's the news.
Tomorrow morning, Melissa and Nellie on being cyber-stalked. Ben Kingsbury on New Zealand's leprosy colony. John O on being a male sex worker. And Mike Chun plays favourites. Join me, Kim Hill, tomorrow morning from 8 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow for Northland, Auckland and Coromandel. Mainly fine but isolated showers in Northland tonight. Waikato to Taranaki, including central high country, also Bay of Plenty. Fine tonight, a few showers tomorrow, then evening rain. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay mainly fine but some rain tomorrow evening. Whanganui to Wellington, also Wairarapa, Marlborough and Nelson. Fine spells tonight, cloud increasing tomorrow, and a period of rain briefly heavy with a strong southerly change. Bulla and Westland showers tonight, rain tomorrow morning, heavy for a time then becoming fine. Canterbury and Otago excluding Clutha, fine tonight, rain spreading north tomorrow morning, followed by a few showers, snow down to 500 metres for a time. Fiordland, also Southland and Clutha. Showers in Fiordland, mainly fine elsewhere at first. Rain tonight with heavy falls, easing to a few showers tomorrow morning. Snow lowering to 300 metres for a time. Chatham Islands, a few showers, rain tomorrow evening. RNZ National. It's coming up to 6:08.
Thanks, Susanna. You're listening to Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. Aucklanders have bought less fuel since the regional fuel tax came in, with both petrol and diesel sales falling 7% in the year since it was introduced. The tax raised more than $150 million in its first year. In the same time, there were 8 million more trips taken on buses, trains and ferries. Proponents of the tax say that's evidence it's achieving its purpose, but others are critical of the effect it's had on basic costs for people who are already cash-strapped. Jordan Bond reports.
Auckland's mayor got what he wanted with the regional fuel tax, $150 million ring-fenced to spend on new transport infrastructure. Almost $90 million of that has already been allocated to transport projects, including $24 million on the Eastern Busway, $20 million on road safety and $11 million on the ferry building. The tax revenue goes towards a wider, decade-long $28 billion spending plan with central government, improving roads, public transport and walking and cycling. Phil Goff says he's pleased that the number of trips on trains and busways rose 21% during the year, and in total 100 million trips were taken last year for the first time ever.
We know that as the population increases towards 2 million people, you can't just keep widening every road and every motorway. We've got to look at better and more effective and more convenient alternatives, and getting that mode change to public transport and other forms of transportation, I think, has been really important.
At 11.5 cents a litre, the fuel tax adds about $6 to the average cost of filling a 50-litre tank. One tank a week would work out to be about $300 extra a year. For the council to get the same amount of money from ratepayers as they do from the fuel tax, general rates would have had to increase 10 or 11%. Auckland councillor for the Manukau ward, Efeso Collins, supports the shift towards public transport but voted against the regional fuel tax. He says it's a regressive tax and hurts his constituents disproportionately, some of whom are struggling to get by financially anyway.
Our people don't normally talk and the poor don't normally complain. And so our people just wear what they have to wear. If it means they're having to pay extra in fuel costs to get their kids to school, then they'll just wear that as much as they can.
Mr Collins says public transport should be cheaper and free for children and community service card holders, with the ultimate goal of free public transport for everyone. Nick Leggett, now the chief executive of the trucking industry's Road Transport Forum, says the tax adds another cost to food and goods, which is passed on to the consumer.
I've heard of stories where businesses have instructed drivers to fill up at a new point, which is outside of the Auckland area. I mean, the point is that adding costs to fuel adds cost to every good and product in the economy that comes on the back of a truck.
Nationwide, food prices rose less than 1% in the year to July, less than inflation, but it's not known how much that rise was specifically in Auckland. Transport commentator Matt Lowry says, as evidenced by faster than expected growth in public transport, the tax may have given people an encouragement to get out of the car.
Sometimes it just takes a little bit of a push to get people to try an alternative, and once they try it, they realise it's actually not as bad as I thought it was, and they keep using it from then on. And there's a number of places around the world we can point to that where we've seen that happen.
Some of the larger benefits resulting from the fuel tax won't be seen for years. For example, the biggest allocation from the tax so far, part of the Eastern Busway, won't even start construction until 2022, but other smaller projects are already underway. Other cash-strapped councils will envy the additional source of revenue, as the Prime Minister's ruled it out for anywhere else under her leadership. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi nei, ko Jordan Bond, tēnei.
Now, some people might choke at the thought of paying almost $7,500 to dine with New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters and Shane Jones, but not Gun City owner David Tipple, who won a seat at the table by being the top bidder in an online auction for Koru Care, a charity for children with disabilities or terminal illnesses. I asked Mr Tipple what about having a nosh-up with Shane and Winston he finds so appealing.
I like to educate my kids. I have 6 children, and my wife and I decided when we'd had 2 years at a private school that paying the earth in private school tuition wasn't for us, that we would say to ourselves, this money that we might have spent on school fees, we'll spend on international travel and introducing to the kids to people who matter.
So do these two matter, do they? In what way?
Oh, they sure do. They sure do. Who in the world gets to meet the person who runs their country?
Hang on a minute, David. I thought Jacinda Ardern runs the country.
Well, she does on most of the time, but you can't deny that Winston has his day.
So how much did you pay for this privilege?
$7,350.
Do you reckon are they worth that much?
Well, it's going to a good cause, isn't it? It's about kids with cancer going to Disneyland, so it's a double whammy, isn't it? I've got the advantage of getting a benefit out of a donation to a good cause.
Now, you say it's about educating the kids and the opportunities there, but you've got 6 kids and you're married, as you point out. There's 2 places on this dinner. What are you going to do?
Well, they've spoken to me already, and if there's only 2 places, well, then it'll be me and my darling wife Betsy. But if they're willing to extend it under certain conditions, then there'll be me and the kids again, like we did with John Key back in 2010.
Okay, I've got to ask, would you have paid as much for a dinner with Simon Bridges?
Well, that's not a very nice question, because you're asking me to put them in terms of money time. Put it this way, I would have actually paid more for this dinner, and I probably would even pay more for one of them. So this is not about the $7,350. This is about the uniqueness and the specialness of this opportunity.
So you would have paid more for Winston and Shane Jones. You reckon you got a sweet deal there?
I did. I'm very happy with it.
You still haven't answered my question about whether you would have paid the same for Simon Bridges.
I think I would have paid more for either.
Really? Okay. What about
Yes.
Jacinda Ardern?
Yep.
Would she have been worth $7,350 for dinner?
Oh, I think even I don't think there's anyone in the world that would doubt that Jacinda would rank quite a bit higher than either of those two, and I'm one of them.
So how do you think the conversation's going to go over dinner?
It's always interesting to understand where they've come from, how they got to where they are. That's what we're interested in, because, you know, the two men who have an extraordinary level of success in their field. So it's just nice to know, you know, how did you get there? What made the difference for you? Why did you make it?
On top of that, you know, these are interesting times in our country, and you've obviously been involved in the discussion around gun law reform. Are you going to bring it up?
I'm sure it'll come up at some stage, but that's not the point of this. It would be you know, a lovely side benefit for some you know, positive discussion on that. But if I go in there hijacking a charity dinner with some kind of lobbying, it wouldn't be very nice of me. We are taking it at its face value, and let's see what comes out of it. I was so impressed after having met Leanne Dalzell after sort of a public dispute. She came to see me at my home, and we both realised that meeting face to face was of so much more value and produced such much more positivity that I decided to meet face to face with Stuart Nash. Likewise, it ended up in a good meeting. David Seymour agreed to meet us, and it was embarrassing. The National MP police spokesman, I can't remember the name of right now, and he agreed to meet us. So it was like we have learned from these meetings that it is so much better to meet face to face rather than form one another's opinions based on what the media reports about us.
So who else have you managed, which other politicians have you managed to have face-to-face meetings with? Have you ever met Winston Peters and Shane Jones for a chat before?
Never. No, I haven't.
And that list you gave us, is that the definitive list, or have there been others?
No, and John Key. And I spoke with Helen Clark on an informal basis years ago as well.
Okay. So will you be trying to gauge New Zealand's first position on this second round of gun reform? Are you interested to know whether they're going to support it or what changes they might be after?
Naturally, I'm interested, but I don't think there's any doubt about where they sit. They're working with the government on it, and that's probably a fait accompli. So, as I say, that's not the point of this. The point of this is getting my kids in front of achievers, and these two are no doubt achievers.
Have you picked the dinner spot yet?
No, I expect that Auckland will suit them, and it'll probably suit me, because if we've got to fly 8 people up there, that's going to be the most easy to find 8 realistically priced seats for. But my eldest son sent me a text after I won it and said, please ask them if they'll meet down here. That way we can introduce them to the grandkids. So I said, well, I'll try. Let's see what happens. So you never know, it might even be in Christchurch.
Flying the Tipple tribe around the country for a dinner is making this a pretty pricey feed, isn't it, David?
Well, what's more important than educating your kids? What's more important than growing them up? And, Lisa, I have got some amazing children. They all work together. They all are friends with one another. So if that was because I fly them around the world, then that was a good investment, wasn't it?
Who do you reckon's got the best table manners, Shane Jones or Winston Peters?
I have no idea, but you can't ignore that Winston appears to have been very well brought up. So I haven't had any experience with Shane, but they tell me that he's pretty toppy too. So let's see.
Before you go, obviously you're in the business of selling guns. What do you make of this second round of reforms?
Absolute load of rubbish. Once again, what would the people who were to blame for a mistake do if they were honourable people? They would fix their own problem. But what have they done? They've blamed law-abiding shooters.
There's a bunch of people listening on radio who think, well, they disagree with you. They're shouting at you right now.
Look, naturally, and I'm always ready for reasoned argument, but facts, figures, whatever you like to present, show that reduction in firearms never produces an increase in public safety. It's a fallacy. And what is all this about? This is about a left inclination to control people. They want to make us a nanny state. Do you feel safe driving your diesel Hilux right now? Because you shouldn't. That could be the next thing they decide to take office. This is a nanny state gone crazy.
And that was Chloe Tipple's dad, David. It is almost 22 minutes after 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. A new initiative on the Kapiti coast will provide funds for schools around the region to access counselling services to young people at risk. The region just north of Wellington has been particularly affected by youth suicides in recent years. Today, some of Kapiti's oldest citizens organised a fundraiser to help pay for mental health services for the younger members of their community, raising thousands of dollars for the cause. Our reporter Harry Locke was there.
14-year-old Courtney is a student at Kapiti College. She says where she's grown up, youth suicide is impossible to ignore.
Well, Kapiti, growing up, I've known that it's had a lot of, Kapiti has a lot of high suicide rates.
She says it's frequently discussed in schools.
Yeah, we always discuss it, and it's just the staggering statistics.
73 people aged between 14 and 19 took their lives last year, the second highest rate amongst all the age groups. Takahe College recently had 2 students commit suicide in consecutive years. 17-year-old Jade is an Otaki College student and says the deaths had a big impact.
It was just not expected at all. Like, it came completely out of the blue, and I think since we're so small, we hadn't really been exposed to stuff like that in the past, so it was just a big shock to everyone.
Her classmate Hetal says suicide prevention is a community-wide issue.
Since we're so community-based around here on the coast, it's only right that we all come together and have this discussion, because there's no other way to do it, and it needs to be prioritised for us young people.
The college's deputy principal Hamish Wood says the problem at the moment is that professionals don't have the time to look after vulnerable kids. He brings up a recent example.
The student was the highest need possible, and so we said, right, now it's time, we need to get the local support services involved, and on the day they were too busy, they couldn't see them, and also when the meeting did take place, it didn't quite meet the point system at that time.
Dr Chris Bowden has been working in the area of suicide prevention for 20 years. He says making sure young people have help when they need is vital.
Getting access to timely support is absolutely critical, and we also know that there is often a small window of opportunity to make a difference in a young person's life, and if they can't get the right help at the right time with the right person, things can go wrong very, very quickly.
Today's fundraiser lunch was organised by Kapiti Rotary and aimed to gather funds to provide much needed help to the region's most vulnerable young people. There were more than 200 people at the event, with extra funds raised through an auction. Organiser Bruce Morgan says the money raised will then be directly available to schools.
If a principal get a knock on the door from a school counsellor or a teacher saying that Brucey's not very well, he needs some help now, we have funding available to support that kid, and we respect their decisions. Rotary doesn't get involved in all that process.
While organisers are still tallying how much was raised today, they say there's at least $10,000 in the kitty to pay for mental health services for young people in the region. For Checkpoint, Harry Locke.
Gisborne or Turanganui-a-Kiwa is buzzing tonight as it prepares for the arrival of tens of thousands of people this weekend to mark the anniversary of the first onshore encounters between Māori and Captain James Cook's European voyages. Tuia 250 ki Turangi starts tomorrow with the Pacific Flotilla arriving at Waikanai Beach, and the lead up to the anniversary hasn't been without controversy. There will be a mass porphyry to welcome the Pacific Waka tomorrow, with the Prime Minister taking part. But the European tall ships arriving next week will have no such welcome. RNZ's Māori News Director Mani Dunlop is in Turanganui-a-Kiwa and joins me now. Tēnā koe, Mani, what is happening there at the moment?
Tēnā koe, Lisa. Well, there's a noticeable influx of visitors in Turanganui-a-Kiwa, and locals say that it's been feeling that way in a couple of weeks into the lead up to these events. So there's no accommodation left. You'll be struggling to get a flight here, but it's all go. And Taira Whiti Arts Festival is also kicking off tonight, which is another event. And obviously the Prime Minister, as you said, has arrived today and had a bilateral meeting with the French Polynesia President, Edouard Fritsch, obviously symbolic of that hononga, that connection with Tahiti and Tupaia.
So what are you expecting tomorrow?
So tomorrow is essentially kicking off the Toia 250 Ki Turanga events. So we've got 3 waka haurua coming in. They're making their way up from Anoda Bay, that's just past Tolaga. And 2 of them, Haunui and Ngahi Raka Mai Tawhiti. Ngahi Raka Mai Tawhiti will hold the kawe mate, or the spirit or the significance of the death of Sir Heki Nuku Mai Busby, who, as we know, was a key leader in the revitalisation of the old navigational skills. Also, a Tahitian waka, Whaiite will also be making its way. So they're going to make their way outside of the harbour quite early in the morning, and there are bonfires that are along the bay, and they will be lit at about 6 a.m. That'll be a sign to those waka that they can make their way in. There'll be putatara as well that will also be called. As they come into the harbour, they'll visit significant sites that are tupuna, of significance to our tupuna, and then they will be welcomed on to Waikanai Beach by local iwi, rongo whakata, te aitanga a mahaki, ngai tā manuhiri e Ngāti Onione. But as you said before, the Endeavour and other tour ships arrive on Tuesday. They won't be getting that welcome. The local iwi collective had said they think it's better that those who were from the Endeavour should welcome those ships and the Endeavour, and so that'll play out on Tuesday, Lisa.
Thank you, Marnie. That's Marnie Dunlop live in Gisborne. The power of poetry is one of the great gifts of language, but in the UK they are taking that power to the next level as a healing aid. In Shropshire, the Poetry Pharmacy is now open, dispensing poems, not pills, to make you feel better. Tim Muffet reports.
Through the doorway they come, with issues to share, to talk, to offload, whilst they lie on this chair. Strangers, doesn't matter, Deborah doesn't have to know them. What she prescribes here are words, in the form of a poem.
I think there's something that poetry can do that no other art quite can do, and it speaks intimately as though from one person to another.
The UK's first ever poetry pharmacy in Bishop's Castle in Shropshire.
People can come in, I ask them a few questions about how they look after themselves, their general well-being, and then at the end of that I'll prescribe them a poem. Do you have a particular condition that requires attention?
I'm too busy. When there's space, I think I should be doing something.
So the poem I've chosen, Postscript by Seamus Heaney. And sometime make the time to drive out west into County Clare, along the flaggy shore in September or October, when the wind and the light are working off each other.
Can poetry really have that much of an effect on someone's mood and sense of well-being?
Nothing like, kind of proper medical treatment or other therapy, really. But I think we all know when we listen to music, lyrics, or maybe a prayer, that how important words can be.
I'm pretty stressed out about the state of the world at the moment.
We live in a crazy world, I think, and people are doing too much, the stresses of modern life. I hope you like it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
And that was the BBC's Tim Muffet reporting there. That's all we've got time for this evening. Have a great weekend.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. A Catholic bishop involved in helping the Royal Commission into Abuse and State Care has offered his resignation to the Pope. The government is scrapping the policy which restricted refugees from Africa and the Middle East coming to New Zealand if they already had family in the country. The National Road Carriers Chief Executive says the closure of the Paraparas Road will have a huge impact on the Whanganui and Raitahi communities. And those at a national secondary school's basketball tournament at Palmerston North this week may have been infected with measles. Our next news will be at 7.
Take the pulse of the day's news every weeknight at 10.
The peace process when it comes to Ireland and Northern Ireland has often had to be about compromise, about fudges, let's be honest.
Lately with me, Karen Hay, is your late night eye on the latest headlines and the people who are making them.
You might say that, Karen. I once again say that I'm not here to pick a fight.